Waging war on corruption. Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
Mark and I were just ranting and frothing because I know the feeling. There's so much documentation, so much evidence of fraud, so much proof. And you're like, look. And then now we have their own emails where the top scientists for the UN are talking to the top scientists in the U.S. and Europe about how to lie and how to persecute scientists and how to fix the data. And in these documents that were released are the computer code of the weather models with the computer programmers explaining to people that may be working on it later, look, this whole thing's a fraud. You got to run all sorts of scams to flip the data. We have videos of the code where it's all described by computer programmers online with the emails, with the code. I mean, this whole thing is red-handed. It's like catching a killer. It's like a murderer shooting somebody at a sports stadium in front of 100,000 people. I mean, they have been caught. It'd be like if a husband choked his wife to death on national television. There's no doubt he did it. There's no doubt they're caught. And Tim Ball, who, by the way, is in my film Fall the Republic and did an incredible job, was a top climatologist early on, didn't have a political axe, got persecuted. And they talk about how to persecute people. They talk about him bad in the emails. I forgot to tell you, they talk about Mark, who we had on last hour with his FOIA request, trying to get the documents, how to block those documents. I mean, this is incredible. And Dr. Tim Ball is now on with us for the rest of the hour. We're extremely honored to have him. We're going to break here in just a moment. But Doctor, how exciting was this? You're like Galileo saying that the Earth orbits the sun, not the sun orbiting the Earth. And now you've been proven right. And that it's premeditated fraud. They weren't just wrong. And you said that all along, because all the other scientists like yourself would do the raw research and say it doesn't add up. And they'd say, shut up. I mean, what is this like for you after all the persecution you've been through?
It's a very sad day, Alex, because it's a sad day for science. It's a sad day for the environment, which we need to care about. People will start to say, now, we don't believe anything you tell us. And they have destroyed climate science virtually, and as I've said elsewhere, there is no pleasure in I told you so. But what we've got to do now is hold people responsible and to backtrack on all of the incredibly damaging legislation that's been brought in or proposed on a global scale, both in energy and economies, based upon this false data.
That's why we've got you here today, to not just talk about their fraud, but you told my producer this is only the tip of the iceberg. I want to go over that, but also talk about what do we do now? We have to bring these criminals to justice. They're openly setting up a tyrannical world government to micromanage every facet of our lives. All these top demographers and researchers have said 1 billion people will die within a decade worldwide if they implemented these carbon rationing, energy rationing plans. It will destroy our economy. Shouldn't they be held criminally responsible, as Lord Mockton is saying?
Well, absolutely. The only difficulty will be, of course, that if it's in a UK court, it depends on how the information was obtained. If it was a whistleblower, that is eligible in a British court. But if it was hacked, that would be deemed inadmissible. So all of this evidence would not be entertained. And of course, we would then be in the same position as I've been in all these years, that I could see what was going on. I knew what was going on, but I didn't have that smoking gun. And
well, stay there.
We've not only got a smoking gun, but we got an atomic bomb here.
I agree. That's how I likened it to, as an ICBM of truth yesterday.
Yeah.
But the issue is they screwed up and admitted it was their emails to the Associated Press. They said, yeah, those are our emails.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, but they're taken out of context, so they should still be admissible. The police need to raid those facilities and get the actual hard drives. We know that'll be admissible, but you know they're in there erasing it all right now.
Have you ever...
The Genesis Communications Radio Network proudly presents The Alex Jones Show, because there's a war on for your mind.
I'm going to try to contain myself because there's so many facets of this fraud. And then how the establishment is calling themselves victims. They're now saying in The Guardian that the climate skeptics with these emails are persecuting good scientists when they're in their own emails talking about how they were persecuting people with government power, how they were blocking FOIA requests, how they were destroying scientific debate and blockading people publishing their science. I mean, this is a rigged club of crooks, and we're going to talk about bringing them to criminal justice. Also, research by Dr. Tim Ball in these emails. John P. Holdren, the eugenicist, is all over these emails, helping coordinate things. This is huge. Okay, Dr. Tim Ball, you've got the...
His involvement was a few years ago. There were two, in fact, they're both still active, Willie Soon and Sally Baliunas, both at Harvard, and they were doing first-class research. They're both solar physicists, and they were doing first-class research. Now, the key thing was the medieval warm period, and they had to get rid of that because they were saying that the 20th century was warmest ever, when in fact just 1,000 years ago it was even warmer than now. And Soon and Baliunas had extensive research proving it. And so, of course, they had to get rid of the medieval warm period, which they did through the hockey stick and Michael Mann and that scandal, but they had to also denigrate Soon and Baliunas. And there's a series of emails in there which Michael Mann is sending to the group, the CRU gangsters, from John Holdren, and Mann says, John thinks you'll be entertained by this exercise. And what it was that Holdren had a series of breakfast meetings in which he sent out information ahead of time, and they debated how wrong Soon and Baliunas were and how right Michael Mann was. And of course, Holdren, using that power that he had, and by the way, he was in the Teresa and Kerry Heinz, and we know all about their connections, that he was in that chair at Harvard. And so Baliunas, and it's about a few years ago, she was on some of our advisory committees on the skeptic side, and all of a sudden, we didn't hear from her. We finally contacted her, and she said, look, basically, I've been under attack here. I've got to step aside. And she also disclosed some of the personal attacks as a woman and as a redhead that were just absolutely outrageous. So this was going on within Harvard, and of course Holdren is very, very proud of what he did.
Let me stop you. Give us details of what she told you, because that's an article that needs to be written to show how they persecuted women and scientists and used intimidation, because they talk about that in some of the other emails, how to intimidate, how to cut funding, how to not let people publish their reports. Let's cover that in a moment. But first, let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
Over and over again, they've been proven that they're lying. They're more polar bears, not less. Polar bears are the best swimmers. They're not drowning. They hunt on ice packs. They're not drifting. They're going to die. They show school kids the Arctic and Antarctic contracting in the summer. They don't explain that it gets big again in the winter. They've been caught lying with the carbon dioxide heat graph, having carbon dioxide coinciding with the heat, not coming after it several hundred years, as you know. Hundreds and hundreds of frauds they've been caught in, but now... before they could deny they were caught or say it was an accident or have a debate about it. Now they've been caught red-handed in these emails at the top climate facility, the UN sites, as you know, Dr. Ball being a top climatologist. How big of an issue is it to have them red-handed in the code, the computer code, with notes on how they do the fraud, and then having them in the emails how they know it's getting colder, but they're going to lie? I mean, is this not the holy grail? You called it an atomic weapon against their lies.
Oh, absolutely. And of course, it isn't just the people, the CRU, the Climatic Research Unit, and Phil Jones. See, now, Phil Jones is the guy who put out that number of temperature increase of 1 degree Fahrenheit, which Gore talks about in his movie. Okay, Jones has consistently refused to disclose how he produced that number. Warwick Hughes wrote to him from Australia the email, and Jones came back and said, we spent 25 years getting these numbers. Why should we share it with you when all you want to do is find something wrong?
And you talk about that in Fall of the Republic. Before this even came out, you pointed at Jones.
Yeah, exactly. No, but beyond that, Jones, Mann, Keith Briffa, and by the way, the person that really started it all is Tom Wigley. He's the Emanos Grease behind all of this, and I've watched him manipulate and control for 30 years, and he started at the Climatic Research Unit. He's now at NCAR in Boulder, and he's the grandfather. He's the go-to guy when they say, what should we do about this? How should we deal with this? You can see that in the emails. But more important, Alex, is that these people control totally the IPCC. And, of course, the IPCC is the authority that all world governments quote and go to. It's the basis of Kyoto. It's the basis of the Copenhagen thing. It's the argument for carbon credits and that whole scam.